Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, How SAP Fiori Can Accelerate and Control Your Capital Expenditure Request Process, hosted by SAP Insider and presented by IQX Business Solutions. I'm Taylor from SAP Insider, and I will be your moderator today. We have just a few announcements before we begin. This webinar is designed to be interactive between you and the presenter. After the presentation, we will host our Q&A session, and we invite you to submit your questions using the Q&A text box within the console. Now, on to the presentation. Discussing today's topic will be Charles Evans, Chief Product Officer from IQX Business Solutions. Now, Charles, over to you.
Great, thanks Taylor, and good morning, good afternoon everyone. I'm very excited to share with you today how IQX believes that SAP Fiori is a great fit to help accelerate and control your capital expenditure request process. So today's webinar, we're going to go through some of the technical components that we believe are critical for a successful CapEx solution. So we're going to go into form flexibility, workflow, SAP integration. We're also going to talk about some of the frustrations and challenges we see in the market today, the benefits over using a unified SAP Fiori solution, what that could look like. We're going to go through some high-level case studies, and then we'll get into the fun part and go through a demo of our solution. So to kick things off, I thought we'd start with a quick poll. It's always interesting to see what our customers and prospects are doing. But what are your primary challenges with your current CapEx process? You know, we see a lot of people saying it's hard to monitor the budget, or approvals taking too long, or lack of visibility, you know, inefficient manual rekeying or integrations, and being able to get the reporting needs that you need. So if you'd like to vote on those, and if it is other, please just throw it in the chat so we can see exactly what some of those challenges are. Okay, so it looks like most of the problems are around how to monitor the status of the CapEx budget. So we're in for some good news today. So we went ahead and built this solution not only to reskin an SAP solution in SAP Fiori, but really built based on the challenges and frustrations we see in the market today from our customers and prospects. Now, these frustrations come in different levels of the organization. It's not necessarily just the end users entering the data. It actually affects the administrators and the executives as well. Initiators or end users are, constantly frustrated by a very manual process. They have to enter these very complex forms, sometimes in Excel, send it via email. They don't really have a good way of knowing who needs to approve based on the division in your organization or based on the amount that you're requesting. So there's typically these large approval matrices that they have to manually reference and figure out who to send it to via email. Another thing we've seen in a few customers recently, they call it a black hole, where these initiators and end users supply these requests, and once it's been submitted, they have no visibility into where it is. So it causes frustration and causes additional questioning. Your administrators, they sit in the background, but they have an important job. They're there to kind of chase up on workflow or requests. They don't have the visibility to do that because it's in Excel and email, and they have to email people. So that's a frustrating process for them. But more importantly, when they try and bring all the data sets together to give them a full 360 view of your CapEx process, they find it very difficult to do so because of the very distributed nature of these different systems. Now, the execs, they have the most important job out of everything, is making the right decision, how to prioritize these requests. And they don't have a way to prioritize based on remaining budget or criticality or a bunch of other characteristics that may be used within your organization, but don't exist in off-the-shelf pieces of software. Also, they're very busy, and when they need to make approvals, they need to do it quickly and confidently. And instead of having to go and open new applications, source for supporting documentation to make that decision, so they don't want to be the bottleneck, they really want an efficient process. So what is the required outcome? What value will a solution like we're going to describe today in SAP Fiori provide you and your organization? Well, it comes down to a number of factors. Number one is speed. You want an increased turnaround in your CapEx requests because that can help your organization save money, improve corporate performance, or eliminate potential risk. We also want accuracy and simplicity. So we want to remove the need for manual admin rekeying of data. We want to get rid of the need for costly and complex integration scenarios in the solution. We also want to provide confidence. We want to provide the confidence to the approvers by giving them the information they need to be able to see it as a whole and be able to make that decision. So that would be, budget amounts, criticality, all those other characteristics. All of these value drivers kind of lead to making the right choice. The most important thing of being able to have that full data set to review so your execs can prioritize your initiatives which are going to make the best impacts to your organization. So we wanted to use Fiori for this, and we could have just done it with those basic kind of value drivers. But we also wanted to see what Fiori could provide to actually help the other frustrations we've mentioned. We want to use Fiori to provide a delightful user experience. We don't want these forms, Excel, SharePoint, as a technical data capture mechanism. We really want to have a very intuitive form that the user understands how to fill out and kind of provides them direction of where they need to go. We wanted to leverage the capability of having everything in SAP to eliminate your integration concerns, to provide that SAP automation of the creation and allocation of your budget, as well as leveraging the existing security you have in SAP today. With other systems outside of SAP, you often have to duplicate your security roles. Leveraging SAP Fiori allows us to leverage what you've already done. And we obviously want to provide a mobile platform for those execs that are busy to give them a way to approve on the go or out the office or wherever they are. So back to another poll, how we manage CapEx requests today. So we're going to go into some solution architecture of how our customers are doing it. But, we've got a wide range from people still using old school paper and signatures via pens or Excel and email, SharePoint, Lotus Notes, or some people are actually using SAP appropriation requests when it's not too limiting for them. So very interested to see exactly how you guys are managing them today. All right. So a very common answer there, Excel and email, and we've got a great case study that kind of shows exactly the benefits that one of our customers received from moving away from Excel and email. So this is a typical solution architecture that we kind of see with most of our customers. You may be using different technology in each of those boxes, but the entire concept here is that you have different data repositories. You effectively have these silos where all these different parts of the CapEx process are being executed. Now, Excel is a great tool. A lot of people rely on their budgeting and their forecasting in Excel because they're number geeks and that's their user interface of choice. But then you get other aspects like wish list items. And typically what we see is those aren't a very formal process. Somebody from the plant will send an email saying, hey, for budget review, I'd really like so-and-so. It's not an actual part of the budget yet, it's a wish list item, but it still needs to be managed. And you can imagine if it was sent via email, you now have somebody receiving all those emails, putting it into Excel, prioritizing it, and then moving along the process. But overall, regardless of the technologies and software systems you use before you get it into SAP, when your internal order or when your project is created, SAP is your financial system, and that kind of drives the rest of the business. So you now have a number of different data repositories. They all have different keying mechanisms. So to be able to get that full view, you have to do a lot of complex reporting, bringing all this data together, and providing an output that's actually usable. At the end of the day, the problem is that there is no single source of truth in this type of situation. So what we want to do is we want to show you a better solution. We want to show you that each of those processes, the wish list, budgeting, etc., in the CapEx can be unified leveraging SAP Fiori. Now, that is going to provide a single user interface or user experience for all of these. So you're going to have user satisfaction. It's going to provide you that single source of truth with the SAP integration to give you that real-time budgeting and analytics requirements, but also giving you those other value drivers we described in the slides previously. Now, the one thing, and we will go into the demo with this, that because it's running in SAP, when we create investment programs or projects or internal orders, or we allocate the budget, or we create assets under construction, or create the fixed assets at the end, that can all be automated because it's sitting inside of SAP. It saves a lot of manual rework, as well as all those integration capabilities. So I mentioned that we'd go through some case studies. I believe these are going to be on our website, but I'll just give you a high-level overview. These are all customers here in the US that have had CapEx implementations within the last 9 to 12 months. Albany International was leveraging a SharePoint system with quite a complex workflow. They found us and used our CapEx solution because they believe that we fill a gap where we fill the edge. We reach the edge of SAP processes. So whereas your CapEx is managed by an internal order or a project, you know, what happens before that? The wish list, the request, the budgeting, all of that is where our solution comes in, and Fiori can fill that gap and reach the edge. Solenis is another customer. They had to move off Lotus Notes because Lotus Notes is no more. And they looked to kind of move this into SAP Fiori to have better integration and better reporting. So that was another successful case study there. They did engage in a SharePoint project to try and do the same thing from Lotus Notes to SharePoint. And after 12 months, they decided not to proceed with that because it was too complex. And I can only imagine there that was due to the integration and the security requirements that you're going to see by using a non-SAP integrated solution. And finally, this is for all you guys that mentioned that you're using Excel and email today, is Maycom automated their CapEx process. They had a very huge Excel request form. They had a tab specifically to help instruct users which approvers they needed to get sent to. They had no visibility. Things took too long. They couldn't manage. They couldn't make it more efficient. And they got a lot of value by changing that Excel and email into an SAP Fiori and workflow solution. So with that, I'm going to get into the fun stuff, and I'm going to go through a live demonstration. Hopefully the demo gods are on my side today. But what we have is we have our SAP Fiori Launchpad. These are the tiles for our CapEx solution, but just know that these tiles are Fiori applications and can sit in amongst your existing Fiori apps, whether you've downloaded them from the Fiori app library or you've had them created internally yourselves. So we have a number of tiles to get into the different processes, but we also have some KPI tiles here to give you information about, you know, how much was the budget, how much has been allocated versus, you know, the spend of projects as the projects progress. So we'll dive into this tile over here, and this is really showing you the power of analytics of everything being driven from SAP. We'll just refresh that so I can open my tile. Now, the one thing many people ask us is whether you require S/4HANA for this, and you don't. You can run this on ECC. This is actually running on an ECC system. So we're going to dive into the budget analytics. This is going to give us, again, those KPI metrics, but it gives us a lot of breakdown. So this is giving us all the approved budget. We'll go ahead and make that 2020. And we can see we have some charts here that give us a visual indication of the amount of budget per investment reason. We have a couple of views there. We can also do by asset class. So if I'm interested in IT, I can select that. That is going to filter my list here. I can see all my IT budget items. I can then go into a specific program. We'll just change this to 2021 so we can get some documents here. Again, we have some interesting graphs. This is a great graph here because we can see that this line indicates what the budget is, what has been cost has incurred, but estimated to complete. Now, if we see that estimated to complete go over the budget, we can start proactively dealing with those issues before they become a problem. So we're going to dive down into a particular order here for that line. We can see the financial summary of the budget, the actual project costs, the commitments, as well as some of our purchasing documents. And again, this really shows the value of, how we requested our budget versus how we requested it to be allocated versus how it's actually being spent. This also allows me to drill into the request. So there is a lot more information that's captured in this CapEx request form that isn't inside of your SAP objects. So this allows you to go and open it up and review all the documentation that has been provided, the justifications, the ROI calculations, as well as any attachments. For now, however, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through the steps of creating a brand new capital expenditure request. So I could go ahead and bore you to death and enter every single one of these fields. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy from a request, meaning I've done this before. Maybe it was for a piece of machinery. Now I need a similar piece, so I can kind of copy that information. You can see it was created by my colleague Richard. And we can go ahead here and say, right, well, this is a turbine installation. And the real beauty of these forms and the way we design these is very different to off-the-shelf products where it's very rigid. We have a very dynamic user interface. So for example, this asset disposal, when I check it here, it gives me an asset disposal tab. So unlike Excel, where you have to look at everything, this kind of guides you through what you need to provide. We also have the same kind of flexibility with workflow. Some CapEx requests affect certain functional areas. If I go down to the workflow diagram, you can see nothing's under functional approval. However, if I deem that this affects RT and EH&S, that will automatically dynamically turn on those workflow steps for this particular request. So that flexibility gives you the way to notify the people that need to be notified, as well as routing the approval appropriately based on organizational categories, company codes, plants example, but also based on the requested amount. So for example, if it's over a certain threshold, it might have more approvers than it would with a lesser value. So we're not going to go through all of these, but you can add, what asset categories you're going to be buying for, the explanation why you need it, what the alternatives are. And these all differ based on which client you're talking to. So, your forms may have something similar, but with our tools, we can kind of customize or tailor it for that. Again, we have costing. One of the things we want to do is still keep the user experience and keep the users happy. So we know some of them use Excel. So we provide the simple capability to go ahead and upload data prepared in Excel. So we're not forcing them to use Fiori. We're not trying to slow them down. We're really trying to kind of enhance their current process. Now, we also have things like checklists where you want the requesters to be able to make sure they answer yes or no. We have our funding. So this gives us real lookups from the budget within SAP. We have cash flow. We have prioritization. And this is really great because based on these different dimensions, each with a different weight, the initiator can say, well, these are the ratings, and we can see this priority changes instantly. So this also helps the approvers know whether it actually aligns with company objectives and initiatives. Resources, just quickly, and this really kind of gives you benefit when you look at all your requests as a whole and all your projects. If you are constrained by resource availability or by cost, this will store exactly when you need certain resources And then you can start mapping out when you can start projects in a staggered way so that you don't run out of resources. Okay, we'll go ahead and add an attachment. We can categorize these attachments here. And we'll send that off for approval. Okay. Now, while that happens, we have the ability within this tool to kind of go into this My Form section. So we talked about visibility being very important. As a user, I can see everything that I'd submitted, plus the current status. So you can see that some of these requests have been completed, some of these are still in the start phase, but this one is sitting in business unit review. Now, I could open this and approve it directly, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to start talking about our approval solution called OneList. Now, OneList is an approval platform that allows you to bring in approval requests from any and all systems within your landscape. The purpose is really to make the approvers' jobs more efficient by giving them one view of all the approval requests regardless of system, but also provide that supporting information. So as an example, and this has just been updated because that came through, so you can see my turbine installation, we can see the details, we can see the audit trail, we can take a look at the attachments. And this actually works on a mobile device as well. So if you can see IQX OneList, we've got our turbine installation, and if we open that app over there, we would have the same view of that CapEx request. So I'm going to go ahead and approve this. And that's going to go back and get sent to the next person in the list. So while we wait for that to happen, I did want to kind of give you a very basic example of that supporting documentation. And it is a very simple process, but leave requests. Somebody sends you a leave request. What are you going to do as a manager? The first thing that you're going to do is you're going to take a look at the team calendar. So this is an example here of what you can actually do to add that supporting information into the decision process. Okay. So that should be approved. We can go back into My Forms over here. We can take a look at the to approve. We can see our turbine installation is still sitting at business unit review. So we'll give that a few more seconds to change. You can see it's now at the CapEx approved state. We can open it up and see all that information. And what I'm going to do here is demonstrate a very accelerated approval process where I can just approve at this point. And now it's doing that. We're going to skip that because it didn't come through. But anyway, once I had approved that, what would happen is it would create that order in SAP, allocate the budget. So doing a number of SAP integration pieces there. So going back, just reiterating some of the benefits of SAP Fiori for CapEx is that you get to leverage your existing investments in SAP. You spent a lot of money on the hardware, the knowledge, the staff, you can leverage that. It's completely integrated with SAP, which is going to help you with your security, your data lookups, your data synchronization, and it's really going to simplify the entire process. It gives you a great user experience that can be tailored for your business to improve their process, and it is very scalable as well. You know, there are a number of downstream processes where we reach the edge using our Fiori platform, such as asset transfers and disposals, vendor onboarding, procurement, as well as many other areas. Now, this highly tailored, we use a rapid application development platform to configure those workflows and forms, so it is very quick. That allows you to add your own classifications and help you with that prioritization process. And finally, how can we help? We've been doing this for a while. We've built a number of great baseline apps that solve the process, and we believe we can demonstrate those to prove that there is value in this type of solution. We can help you design these kind of configuration tweaks to those baseline apps that are going to meet your organization's requirements. And we can do that with no limitation. So unlike these off-the-shelf products that you have, only a certain ability to add fields and workflow, this really gives you the full flexibility to be able to tailor the solution to your needs. So that concludes the presentation part of this webinar. I think we'll just jump into some Q&A right now. So do we need S/4HANA to do this? As I said, no, we can actually run this on ECC, and that's what we're running on today. And another question we have is, do we support custom classifications and evaluation metrics? And absolutely we do. That is one of our value adds because we believe every organization is different. So we want to give you the flexibility to add your configuration and your additional metrics into the form, not only for data entry, but for reporting and analytics as well. Another question we have here is, do we need one list or can we process our approvals through Fiori My Inbox? You don't need one list. You can leverage the My Forms application that I showed you today that really leverages existing components in our solution. You could hook it up into My Inbox if you wanted, but one list is obviously the best choice for that. All right, I saw a question, will you make the presentation deck available? I believe the answer there is yes. If there are any other questions that you want to send via chat, I can respond to those. We have a couple of others. All right, another question, are we able to forecast monthly cash flow on initiatives that are planned but not yet approved projects? And the answer is yes. We do that for a lot of our customers. They want to be able to forecast on stuff that hasn't been approved, and we can definitely do that. All right, so we had a question on the pricing of one list. I'm not going to share that over the webinar, but we can absolutely follow up with you with some prices for that approval solution. So are there any other questions that we may have that I can answer before we sign off? I know we've only got 2 minutes left of the session. Okay. Well, Taylor, I think that's a wrap.
Yeah, thank you, Charles. That was a great presentation, and thank you everyone for attending today's webinar. As Charles said, we will have the presentation available for everyone, as well as the deck on the SAP Insider website. So on behalf of SAP Insider and our guests at IQX Business Solutions, thank you so much and have a great day.